Okay, I'm going to show you a couple of things to give you a clue what I expect of the modeling when I say things like Clean Quad and what tools you might use to get started. I've linked a lot of good tutorials from digital tutors and Lynda to help get you started, particularly the essentials courses from lynda.com. Maya Essentials, you can look at that to get more detailed instruction. And in fact, if you find something, a similar building that you are making, feel free to use a tutorial that is very similar to what you're trying to make. Just make changes to it so it is your own. But if this is your first time modeling, there's no better way to get up and running than step by step copying something. This is not a really spontaneous art, 3D. You've got to already know what you're doing before you can start to play. Playing around when you don't know what you're playing with is like a kid with a chemistry set. It could be dangerous. So you could waste a lot of time and just make a mess and crash your computer constantly and get frustrated. So let's not have that. But a few things I want you to be aware of. Because I don't mind if you have a lot of geometry, but I don't want you having unnecessary geometry. And when I say geometry, I mean number of faces in a mesh. Okay, so we call poly count geometry. All that's very interchangeable. Here, my window, you'll see, I'm going to use this one, which is the third preset down, which for some reason isn't working. Remember, this is my first couple of excursions into 217. So there could be some issues, and I'm finding there are already issues with having to toggle to get things to show, and some other things happening that are icky. And the reason I typically wait a very long time before I ever upgrade to the next step, but they have seduced me with Arnold Renderer, so here I am. Now I'm not even on 10. I'm not upgrading to 10 on this computer, Windows 10, so that could be many of the problems could be my own fault. And you will find yourself in the same situation. So I'm going to show you these tools pretty much that you can use in this shelf making that we're going to do in a second. You can use in any version with the same commands. So I'm hoping that will help version shifting. If you really can't find a tool in 2015, email me. But 2016 and 17 basically have the same modeling menus and things like that. So what I was looking for from this preset was for the panel over here to be the outliner. Okay, there you go, which will show me everything in my scene. Another thing I have up is my poly count, and you'll find that under display. I think it's a heads up display, poly count. Just make sure there's a check, and that helps me keep track of these components in the meshes that I have. Remember, we're only doing polygon modeling. I don't know why that was there for this course, so that'll make that easier too. So it comes up when you go into the modeling menu here, menu set, it comes up, you typically open with the polygons shelf, which is great. But I'm going to make my own because I want to focus just on a few tools that I think everyone should have, or that if you're new to this, I'd like to introduce you to. So to make a new shelf, I've got this little settings button. I'm just going to say new shelf. And I'm going to type poly count, poly tools I mean. And I'm not going to have any spaces. I'm using Hunchback text, capital T, to distinguish the words, because if I put a space in there, it'll tell me it doesn't like the name. Alright, so to put a tool on the shelf, you hold down the Control and the Shift keys and select the tool. So the tools I most commonly use, let's go see. I think I'll save Combine for and Fill Hole for Advanced, and Smooth. I'll save that for Advanced. So I don't see anything here that I'm going to use. Edit Mesh. We'll talk about bevel later too. I'm going to show you an easier way. Connect, attach, extrude. Extrude is one I use commonly. So I held down the Control and Shift and clicked on extrude, and you see it showed up over here. Merge I use a lot, yeah, but it used to be you would merge by component, and I guess it just merges whatever you've got selected now. So merge. I'm going to have a hard time remembering these symbols have changed. Not what I'm used to looking at. Average vertices is great when you make a mess of somebody. Let's save that for medium or advanced. This is going to be intro level. Okay, so for this next whatever assignment, I've got this plugged into. Delete edge vertex. You can just delete a face by hitting the delete key. You can delete a vertex by hitting the delete key if there is no edge attached to it. But if you delete an edge, you're going to leave the vertex behind if you just hit the delete key. So, and that's going to make a mess of your geometry. It won't be clean geometry. So let's put that there. Don't think I'll use any of those. And mesh tools. Insert edge loop. Love it. Sculpting tools I talked to you about. I just used one or two there with your ground plane. So I'm going to leave that. Let's see. That's not really. All right, we'll start with that, okay? All right, so let me go in here and create and start with a cube. And I like that little one face cube. I can go over here to the channel box, click on the polycube so I get the details, and I can say how big I want it and how many subdivisions I want. Let's start with 10, meaning 10 of whatever I've got my settings set at, okay? And it didn't come up in the center. Look at that. That makes me unhappy. That means that, it traditionally would mean interactive creation was on, but it should happen. Oh, no, it went in the center. It's just distorted looking. Okay. All meshes create in 0, 0, 0 space. So if you're creating objects separately to be combined later in another scene, you want to create them at 0, 0, 0 space. But I don't like looking at that grid. But remember now, if your ground plane is on 0, Y, your buildings are halfway underneath. So sometimes you want to raise these guys. I'll do that later if I do it at all. Okay, so a couple of things about these tools. So let's say we're making a house, and I was talking about 10, 10, 10, how big that was. Sorry. For heaven's sakes, I haven't been well, so I'm not really with it. In your preferences, your settings are by default at centimeters. Typically I put them at inches or feet or yards. If I'm doing I try to keep it as close to real world as I can, unless you're talking about acres of land, in which case I do it at 1/10. That way your lighting looks more correct and your objects don't look like miniatures. So I'm going to save feet here. So this is a 10 foot. Let's say 10 feet's not real smart. Let's say for a building this is it adjusted. It was 10 centimeters, so let's say I want 30 feet each way. So I hit the F key and that framed frames me up. All right. So there's several things I can do here. Say, this is ugly, and it's nothing, but let's say it's a building at this point. Well, I want windows and doors. Okay, so how do I add the geometry for that? There's several ways of doing it. And here's my favorite way of adding geometry. Say I want something smack in the middle of this, just a big window smack in the middle. The easiest way, not to add too much geometry, but to get to where I can cut my window out, is to take the face. So I'm going to right click and go to faces, select this face, and extrude. And extrude without moving away. I want to click on something so I can get that center. And here's something else I want to point out. The reason I keep these rectangles in my faces is so that you see the rectangles on the edges. That's a new face, and students are always early on dropping the extrusion tool like this and going away and wondering why their geometry is a mess, because if I smooth this I get this weirdness happening. And it's not clean geometry. I have these invisible faces with no map area, and I have to either, I have to do a lot of work to get rid of them or use cleanup. So that's why I keep that, so you know that that's there. And if you do that, you can still select the center face and just scale it down. No, you can't. Selected all the rest. You used to be able to. So let's step back a few spaces. I'm hitting Control Undo, Z, Control Z. Here I've got it again, and I'm going to extrude. I'm going to click on that I'm not going to move it because I'm not moving forward or backwards. I want to add geometry to this one face while maintaining my clean quad construction. So I hit this center so I can get the center scale, and I scale it in. Now I magically have I'm surrounded by quads, and I have new geometry, and that can be my window or my door. I can make it any size that I wish. And then if I want it to have some dimension, from here I can keep going. If I hit the G key, I'm going to get the last tool I used again. So let's bring it out a little bit. I'm going to hit the G key again. Back to the center. I'm going to create a frame for my window. G key. And now I have a glass window with a frame. Alright, let's render this. Let's see what this looks like. Now, at a sketch level, at an introductory level, I'm doing alright. So let me put a different color on this guy. Go back to object mode and select him. And I'm going to right click and say, excuse me, I'm going to add a different material, assign favorite material, blend, so it's a little bit shiny. Everything comes on with Lambert 1, and you can't make too many changes to Lambert 1, but you can change the color and you can do all kinds of things, but everything that you can't get rid of it is one thing, and everything you make is going to come in with Lambert 1, so just be aware of that. If you already make a material, you can keep using it. So this blend, I'm going to choose blend, and I'm going to call it building. So if I make a bunch of buildings, I can keep putting this material on. I don't know why it didn't come up in here, because that's where I want it. Let's see, if I choose a face and I want to apply a particular material to that, I can apply that specific material, which we'll do for this window. But let's get back that building texture attribute editor. Let me back to object, say, okay, there it was. Look at all this mess, all this stuff. If you're getting deep and you've got all these tabs and you don't need them because you don't need history, let's just say file, no, edit, delete by type history. All that goes away, but now I've lost my history, so just be aware of that, okay? So here's my building, and I should have a capital M to alert me that that is a material. Let's just change the color. I'm going for kind of a bricky color. Well, whatever. We'll just so I can tell it from the background. We'll leave it at that. And while we're here, let's have some more fun. Let's go back to faces, select this face, right click. Let's add another blend. Call this blend Windows Material or Glass M, capital M. And I'm going to add a lot of transparency and make the color black and add total transparency, and later I'll put in the details. For you guys doing grunge looks, you might want to map the transparency, so some places are dirty and some places are clear. You'll want to map the bump mapping to put cracks in your windows and this kind of thing. A lot of nice things you can do there. But let's see what this looks like now. I'd like to get rid of this. Go back to channel block. All right. Let's render this little bit that we've got so far. You may, when you hit this render window with the eyeball, you may get a really small window by default like this, and you can't see your options. So make the window bigger. And I'm choosing Maya software at this point. I have no lights or anything. Okay, no ground plane, no lights, anything, so it's going to look like nothing. I'll go over some simple rendering issues when we get to a little later, when you get to advanced and need to see cast shadows and stuff. So let me just render the current. Okay, let's just see what we've got. Okay, you can see inside the box, you can see these very sharp lines, and this is okay for the very beginning, but we're going to learn techniques to soften those lines, to add edges, because there are no razor sharp edges. Even on a razor blade, you want the light to reflect off this edge. So we will go over that later, but you can see now I have a red box with a frame, and if I want the frame different, I can put a different material with a different color on that. Well, let's not get too involved in that kind of thing quite yet. But so here's how you see what you've got. If you want to keep that image to make comparisons, you take a snapshot of it. No, that was, I clicked the wrong button somehow. I don't think I clicked the wrong button. That's snapshot. Oh, idiot. Okay, sorry. Here's the snapshot I want. There we go. That saves it. Now I can go make another render. Let's say I'll just move the thing so you can just see. So I make another render, and now I can flip back and forth. Okay, but I'm not going to save this render. All right, let's put that away. So that's the easiest way if you have a centralized object that you want to add. Now, a couple of other things I want to alert you to that I don't want to see. I don't want to see a plain wall that has hundreds of edges on it. Okay, let me get this tool. Let's see. I want the options box for this tool. There, I selected it, so now if I double click, I'm going to do multiple edges. I'm going to add 10 edges. I see a lot of very plain geometry, meaning this. There's no detail here. So why do we have all these edges? There's no reason to have them. This is what I call, this will be not good geometry. You need to get rid of these guys. Because there's no reason for them. Now, if I had something happening at each one of these levels, that would be really different. Or almost each one of these levels. Okay, and then there'll be my next example, you'll see some extra edges that may or may not really have any reason to live. But they do on the other side of the geometry, so we'll talk about that in a minute. But you'll need to get rid of these. Now, to get rid of them, you will right click and go to edges. If I double click, I get, oops, I don't want to do that. Let's take this off. And get rid of the tool settings so that I don't, or I can just reset the tool to its defaults. Go back to channel box to get out of my way. I'm going to edges and get my selection tool and double click on any edge and I get the entire loop. So I'm double clicking on all these to select them because they have no reason to live. And you see it goes all the way around. Now if I hit delete, I'm going to have, let's just do it, all these excessive vertices. See? And I just can't have that. I can hit delete again, okay, and get rid of them, but then you have to be confident you found them all. So let's go back a few steps. And here is my delete edge vertex, and that'll do it for me. So there's no secret ones in there. Okay. So basically, this was about the extrude in place tool. Okay. I'm going to pause the recording and see how long. Well, it's been 21 minutes. I'm going to stop here and do the next one on other ways of adding geometry to your object. Okay.